A couple of days ago, Peter McKinnon put out something he called the B-roll challenge, and this is a follow-up to my participation in that challenge. I'm Bill Snodgrass. Welcome to episode 83. After I put my my B-roll video in the response thread of his channel, I came across a couple of questions. People had asked him questions. And it was like, what do you do if you don't have anything except 24 frames per second? And another question was, what if you don't have multiple lenses? What if you only have a kit lens? So this video is setting out to answer those two questions. What if you only have the kit lens, and what if you only can shoot in 24 frames per second? When we think about B-roll, we need to think about it in terms of its purpose in the video. Why do you have the B-roll in the first place? If you look up a Google definition of B-roll, it's going to tell you that it's supplemental footage that helps to, tell the story. And I think that's a really key and important part to remember. So that doesn't mean that B-roll has to be in slow motion. The purpose of B-roll is to help the person watching the video understand what the video is about, and to give some additional additional views of a scene. If you think about a newscast, I don't think I've ever seen slow motion B-roll in a newscast, but there's a lot of B-roll. In their news packages, they use a lot of B-roll. So there's no absolute necessity that B-roll be in slow motion. So I'm gonna be using my 77D, and I got a couple of devices. I got this little tripod thingy. It's not really meant to be a camera tripod, but it works for what I'm going to be using it for. And then the other thing is I have this grip thing, and this gives me a way of getting two hands holding it, several different positions. Also, to give a little bit of. This is like a $20 thing, and of course I'll put the link in the comments. So the first way that you can use a kit lens and 24 frames per second, this is a technique. Remember, the point is you're trying to tell the story. And so I've come to this place, and here's a little B-roll. See the place? This is where I came to. So I've come to this place, to this little conservation area. And so here's the thing. If you watch Peter McKinnon's B-roll sequences, or you watch Matty Hapoya's B-roll sequences, they're part of the story. So Peter will be like, all right, today we're gonna work on this thing, but then it's gonna be awesome. But first, coffee, boom, B-roll sequence. And then the coffee's over. Or it'll be like, Matty and I, we're gonna go down to the beach, and we're gonna use our drone, and we're gonna check out we're gonna ride our one wheels, boom, B-roll sequence of them getting to the beach. So then the story of the video follows. So B-roll is part of the story. Okay, so what's the story of this conservation area? So you can imagine a news package, perhaps, or a documentary in which the story is that the conservation officer has to check on the conservation area in order to maximize the effect of the whatever. So you've got, you have your reporter, or you have you as the videographer or the documentarian saying these things, and then the B-roll would then pop in over top of the voice thing. So that'd be the classic news package. Or you could say maybe it's a story about the ranger, and he said, he was up at McDonald's, and he says, all right, so now I gotta go check on this conservation area, and then I'm gonna go to the mall. So this B-roll footage that I'm packaging together would be the transition from he's at McDonald's and he's checking on the area. So that's kind of that's the story this fits into. The first technique for using a kit lens and a 24 frames per second, the first trick is don't move the camera. What? Let's see what that looks like. So remember, the story is you've got to sometimes come and make sure there's no trespassers. Okay. So that's the story, and the B-roll is part of that story. So here we go. Let's do this. First technique: don't move the camera. Okay, so the camera's down here. See, we're not moving the camera. We're moving the Tahoe. Not done. Okay, so I'm gonna put those three clips together, and it's gonna look like this. All right, so the next thing, so in the story, the ranger or whatever has come and he's got out of the truck. So now I'm gonna do a little pan of what the ranger sees. So I'm gonna do a pan across here. Now, this is hard to do because of physics. The reason that doing a pan shot is difficult is because if something is far away and you move the camera just a little bit, right? You change the angle of the lens. If you ever rode a merry-go-round, you know that the closer to the center, the slower you move. So that would be things close. As the camera is moving, the field of vision is moving slowly. But if I'm looking at something far away on the horizon, and just a little tweak of the camera, I will have covered hundreds of yards. So to do any kind of a pan handheld with the kit lens, so one thing I'm doing, I'm cheating just a little bit. I've raised my shutter speed up to 80 instead of, since I'm shooting at 24, the rule of thumb is you double your shutter speed. So I usually shoot 24 at a shutter speed of 50. But I've raised it to 80 just to give me a little margin of error. It's gonna make some of those frames be a little more crisp. I'm also gonna intentionally try to pan through these closer objects rather than the trees in the background. And then the third thing I've done is I'm gonna go ahead and get a little deeper depth of field because I know I'm gonna be panning the camera. So I'm setting my aperture on 9 instead of it goes down to 3.5. It goes down to 4. So I'm setting it on 9, which is just going to give me a little bit more. So now the story. Remember, B-roll is part of the story. So the Rangers come out of the truck. So this is what I'm going to do. So now I'm going to pan with my torso. I'm not going to pan with my hands because that's all like wah crazy. I'm gonna pan with my torso. I'm gonna pan very slowly with my torso. So I'm gonna start at the end of the pan, and I'm gonna go back, and I'm gonna use my hips and my torso to do the pan. And it'll be what it'll be. Okay, here's a little tip for your pan shots. Start a little bit before where you want the pan to begin and go a little bit further than you want it to go. So that way the beginning and the end, the jerkiness at the beginning and the end of the pan Okay, so there you go. 24 frames per second. That was at 80. So here's what it looked like. Obviously, I haven't seen it yet. I'm just telling you that it's gonna be in the video here. So the second tip is with pan shots, don't use your arms, but use your torso and start off to one side where I know I'm going to end up over here. So I've kind of faced myself this way so that I can just use my torso to make that smooth pan. I didn't shoot that. I was just demonstrating the technique. The next thing, another thing is, if you're panning on things that are close up, it's a little more forgiving. So I'm gonna go back to the 50 frames per second, and this time I'm gonna try for some of the bokeh, and it's gonna be challenging because this lens only goes down, the kit lens only goes down to 4. And so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna plan my shot. I'm gonna start over here in the grass. I'm gonna come up through the grass to the A rail, and then just let it. Hopefully, it'll find the focus out in the distance, and it'll be a nice, pull focus effect. I'm using autofocus because that's just seems to be the thing to do. So here we go. We're gonna try this shot. All right, so the shot was a pull lift changing elevation shot, and by going from something close up to something far away, made a nice little effect. Now, this camera, the 77D, has a built-in digital stabilizer. And up to this point, I haven't used it. So I'm gonna turn that on. And so the rest of these clips will have the digital stabilizer effect. And I know not everybody has that, so, but the Canon 77D does. And this is one of the reasons I chose this camera, was the digital image stabilization. So now I'm gonna get a little bit of help from the camera software. All right, so in this shot, I'm going to, I'm gonna kind of pan across the railing and onto the sign, and then I'm gonna lift over the sign into the distance, into the field that's out there. So that's the way I'm planning this shot. So the plan is I'm gonna do a little pan. So I'm gonna pan to here, and then I'm gonna track and then go up. Okay. All right, here we go. And then I think the story needs a picture of the ranger looking over the fence to kind of wrap things up. And so I'm going to do that with the camera stationary. And I'm going to so I'm going to throw that in. And then I'm going to have some B-roll for my B-roll, which will be like some close-ups of some items and things around. So okay, I just set the camera on the hood of the car. I'm just gonna, now, another thing you can do if you're shooting 24 frames per second, you can walk slow. Yeah. I gotta go turn that one off. So the last thing I think I'm gonna do like a pan across the chain and the lock. And this is the 1855 EFS and it's the silent focus that comes with the. All right, so I'm gonna do what I just said. Again, the thing to do is making sure that everything is just like nice and tightly held, and I'm moving with my trunk and not just wah. Oh, that was bad. Fall backwards, a la Peter McKinnon. Here's something else I do. I always try to rehearse the shot, just to kind of give my body a chance to figure out what it's going to do. So I rehearse the shot before I actually start recording. And here's a composition thought. I like to begin before I hit the start button, what would be a good photograph, rule of thirds, leading lines, those kinds of things. And then I like to find another good photograph to end on. And then I'll start just on the other side of the good photograph, move into the good composition, pan around, do whatever, end up on the good composition, then go just a little bit further. I hope I recorded that. That was good. Okay, I'm gonna go do this shot where I'm just kind of getting the name of the area up close, and then I'm gonna kind of just go off into the distance, and that'll be like my closing shot or something. All right, so that last pan was at 55 millimeters. It was the tree line out there on the end, and I have a feeling it's gonna have this kind of like staccato look to it, because the limitations. This is where going 120 frames per second or 60 frames per second. That's where the benefit comes in. All right, so all of this was shot at 24 frames per second. With the kit lens. So I'm gonna edit all together, throw some music in. There you have it. So that's my kit lens 24 frame per second B-roll tutorial. Just quickly reviewing some things you can do if you don't have slow-mo. One, don't move the camera. Just let the camera sit still, move around the camera. Two, make your pans as close as possible so you don't get the physics geometry thing where you're sweeping your field of view across thousands of yards in a few seconds. And number three, hold it in tight and close to your body. Pan with your torso and not your arms. So those are the three things that you can do. Plan your shots in advance is always a good idea. What you're going to do to rehearse that'll help you smooth it out. So I hope you enjoyed it. Also, just in case, there's no fishing allowed in the cornfield. Just in case. There is no water in view, and that's it. Under the penalty of law, just say it. No fishing. Again, 3 things. Pan close, keep it in nice and tight. Don't move the camera. Ways of getting good B-roll. Remember, B-roll is part of the story. It's a transition from this to that. So it helps to add information. That's the whole point of it. It doesn't have to be buttery smooth cinematic 120 frame per second B-roll. You can do 24 frame per second B-roll and it'll be just as effective in creating story. It may not be as pretty, but it will still create story, and you can do it. That's what I got. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, notifications. That would be kind of cool. Leave me a comment, questions, anything that you think that you would like for me to talk more about. I talk plenty enough as it is, but maybe there's something else. See you in the next episode. So you can imagine, you can imaginize, you can, what am I just blather?